Good morning and welcome. Thank you, Marcus, for jumping in there and starting off our chat. I hope everybody's doing great. It is Tuesday, October 6th. Can you believe it's already October? Where does time go? It flies. So, time flies and we're having fun. I hope we're having fun. So, I want to, well, we've got a few minutes. We'll let everybody jump in, but today we're going to kick off with bargaining and negotiating. That's week 7. That's our topic. We're going to talk about bargaining and negotiating. So we'll let some folks get here. Anybody have any funny stories you want to tell? Anybody, can you hear me? Hey, Josh, can you hear me? Tiffany, Marcus, you can just, looks like somebody was saying something, but I couldn't. Stefan, that was you. Um, I'm not hearing you, man. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, we can hear you. Okay, thanks, Stefan. I couldn't hear you, which is fine, but I'm glad you can hear me. So you see, I have my little B-roll going right there. That's just kind of to entertain. This is hopefully going live to YouTube and our Facebook page. So as we're admitting new folks to the group, the Zoom meeting, we have a couple of minutes before we get started. Obviously, if I start now and then admit 5 people, I have to say it again. So hopefully you're getting your coffee, your beverage, your morning caffeine, however you consume that, or your hydration. I have my hydration. So welcome everyone to week number 7, bargaining and negotiating. Stefan, are you trying to say something? I see you keep popping up. That's a beautiful group. I don't know who it is. Who is that anyway? Nope. Okay. Cool. That's a cool group. Is that a bunch of friends? It keeps popping up on my screen, which is fine. It's probably because you're, I don't know why, but anyway. Nice picture. Which one of those people is you? I should know, but since you're not sitting in my class, I can't pick you out of a crowd. Right. Just me and some friends. Yeah, cool. I don't have any friends, so I can't put any pictures up of me and friends. That's not true. I have lots of friends, some good friends. One of my friends gave me this cup. Isn't that cool? That's his company, Dave. Dave's over yonder. If you guys ever get a chance to come visit me in my office, I run my business and my online courses now out of U of H Technology Bridge. So the University of Houston Technology Bridge, if you've never been here, it's a pretty cool place. We have this new building. It's called the Innovation Center, and I lease a space, but my space is shared. So we have lots of startup companies, not lots, but a few, and this is where they work from, and it's an awesome space, and I love it. I love working here, and thank goodness when COVID hit, I didn't have to get out of my office. I've been able to come in every day, so that's very good for me because I have 2 grandchildren living at my house as a result of COVID. My daughter and her husband moved to Houston right when it was starting, and they got jobs, and then they lost their jobs, and then we have beautiful house guests. You're the one holding the frisbee. Cool. Now, if I could just see the picture again, because it just comes and goes. Now it's you. It's a red frisbee. All right, cool. All right, it's time to get started, so I'm going to kick it off. This is the week for bargaining and negotiating. However, before I get started with bargaining and negotiating, I need to change my screen. I I just got a phone call. I'm going to turn my phone off. You know, if we were in class together, one of the things I always do, it's talking to me. One of the things I do every class period is I hold up my phone and I turn off my phone and I ask you to turn off your phone. And since we're doing this online, it's one of the things I don't do. But I think it probably would be a good idea for you to tune out of other media and tune in here. So here's what I want to show you. This is, let me get to where I need to be. This is a test student, and I wanted to show you what happens when you register for your online planning portal. Now remember, Money Study Group, that's where you take your online course, and you have to pay that little fee. Well, if you took the early bird special, you got a discount. So anyway, that's Money Study Group. But then you have to register for a planning portal. And I know most of you know this, and I don't even need to say it, but I do need to mention it because I'm continuing to get emails and messages from students who are telling me they don't have access to some of the dashboard. So I just wanted to review this again. I reviewed this in week 2. This is a week 2 assignment for you to go ahead and register and just complete the data entry, the initial data entry. And so I've been looking at GroupMe, and I see that many of you are coaching other students who are finding that they're not able to access their full dashboard because they never hit the complete button. So that's kind of it's a question that comes up regularly, and I'm so grateful to have GroupMe as a resource this semester. And I'm so grateful for those of you students who are willing to pay attention to what's being posted there with questions and answers. So thank you for that. And those of you who have the question, what's concerning me is that we're having this question this late in the semester. And so before we get into today's lesson, I need to address something pretty important for students who are typically in this position where they still don't have access to the full dashboard. So initially, you register for the online planning portal. Once you register, I have to come in, or my staff has to come in, and we have to click and give you access, which I never do this for real clients because it's just too much information, but I'm happy to give you access to the full dashboard. And as we go through the semester, then we have assignments that require you to be able to access different components, different data cards. And each of these checks is pretty much a data card, a different element of your financial plan. So you have access to your entire comprehensive financial planning dashboard, which is pretty cool. It can also be a little overwhelming, but I try to keep you focused so that you know exactly what you need to do each week without having to be too distracted with all of the other things available in your portal. Now, some of you are really interested in financial planning, and you're taking advantage of the opportunity to go and explore, test drive, and do some analysis, which is awesome. I encourage that, but I certainly don't require it. And so for those of you who are sending me messages now saying I don't have access to my dashboard, here's why. It's because you just now recently registered in your planning portal. And when you register, I come in and I check all these boxes. And so I encouraged you, I gave you an assignment in Blackboard to do this. I think it was week 2. And that was the week that I came in and went through everyone and gave you access. Those of you who came along later, you have to message me, and then I have to come in, log in, find you, and then check the boxes so that you have access. So for those of you students who are helping in GroupMe, answering questions for students who even at this point don't know this and are asking for access, it's because they're very behind. And so those of you who are helping them, I appreciate that. Those of you who are behind, I appreciate that. I was a solid C student in college, so I'm with you. On the other hand, and this is the big announcement for today, if you're one of those students who are asking for access at this point to your planning portal, I would suggest you take a look at the points that you have in the course. So the average is well over 300 points right now. And if you have less than 300 points, I would strongly encourage you to drop the course, because you're very likely not going to have any possibility of getting a passing grade. So here are three options. If you're one of those students who are asking for access to your planning portal, or you find yourself with a lot of incompleted assignments and a low number of points, I would encourage you to, you can drop the course and take it again next semester. I promise you won't have to pay again for money study group. I'll make sure that I keep track of that. As long as you paid the first time, I will just pay that forward. So that's number one. Probably the easiest if you're struggling to keep up at this point. I suspect you know this, that it's a good idea to consider dropping the course and just taking it again. As I'm pretty sure you don't have to pay for it with the University of Houston again. So that's number one. Number two is if we go through the rest of the semester and you still just are nowhere close to getting a passing grade, or you're going to get a grade that's really not good, we can do an incomplete. I'm happy to to give you an incomplete. I hate to give you a failing grade, but that's option number three. Option number three is for students who just refuse to acknowledge the reality. And then they come to me at the end of the semester and try to cajole me and convince me that for some reason they should get an exception and they should be given an opportunity to do a bunch of work at the end, which creates a bunch of work for me. And I can't, I have a hard time saying no, but at that point, you just don't have much of a chance to get a passing grade. Or if you do, it's not going to be a good grade. And I don't negotiate that. So today we're going to talk about bargaining and negotiating. So I'm trying to negotiate with you to do the right thing for yourself. If you're behind at this point, drop the course. If you feel like you still have a chance, you're welcome to keep working. You're going to have to work hard to make up. I'm going to post a couple of, or at least one extra credit assignment this week. But that's not going to help you if you're under 300 points. You're still going to be significantly impaired. So again, three options. Drop the course, take it again next semester. Number two is if you feel like you really want to keep trying, you keep trying, and you have the option of taking an incomplete at the end of the course and then finishing whenever you can finish. And then number three is if you think you're going to game the system and put things off and try to wrap it all up at the end, I promise you that's been tried before and it doesn't come out well. So don't do that, because I will fail you. And that's not an empty threat. I hate it. I do it every semester, though. I have a few students who just think somehow they cannot do the work all through the semester and then come to me at the end and give me all these reasons they should get exceptions. And I'm telling you, if you can't do the work, don't do the course. Put it off. Take it next semester. We'll still be here. At least I hope I'll still be here. So anyway, that is the announcement for today. So let me see if I can get back into the course review. Okay, I think I'm going to turn off my B-roll. So you just have me now. All right. I'm going to jump into Zoom and see if we have any questions before I get started. I don't see any questions. If you haven't done so, please pop in your name. I want to make sure I'm recording this meeting too. Record. Okay, we're recording because the recording grabs the roll. So if you haven't done that, please pop in your name. So I think I see some other people that need to be admitted. Nope, looks like everybody's here who's going to be here. All right. Hey, Alexandra, good to see you. everybody else has their face off, which is great. I wish I could have my face off. I might do that one day, just turn off my camera, but not today. So today we're going to talk about bargaining and negotiating, and you'll have a little coursework to do. Um, Wait, do we have to write our name this whole time when we get in? I thought that was automatic. You know, it's not automatic for me to be able to see you were here. It doesn't make a record, so sorry about that, Philip. Um, yeah, and I do ask you to put the time that you got here. At this point, it doesn't really matter about the time because I don't admit anybody after 5 minutes after. So enough with the announcements. Let's jump into the class. It's going to be a short one today, really. Bargaining and negotiating is the topic. I'm really curious, and I'd love for you to, give me a little feedback in the chat box. My curiosity is, some of us love to bargain and negotiate. It's like a sport. It's like a sport. It's like fun. It's something we actually like doing. But some of us, and I know many people like this, my wife is like this, feel like bargaining and negotiating is something that is awkward and uncomfortable, not fun. It's a chore, and frankly, it's something to be avoided. And so I'm curious how you feel about bargaining and negotiating. Alexandra, doesn't it get so nervous to negotiate? Yeah, you get. So I'm reading two things in one comment, it looks like. But yeah, you get nervous. Yeah, I don't know that my wife's name is Connie. She doesn't get very nervous. She just doesn't like it. But I guess I could see where getting nervous would be part of it, depending on what you're bargaining for or what you're negotiating. So, for example, I can think, just when I think about getting nervous, one thing I would get nervous about bargaining or negotiating throughout my lifetime would be if I was in a position where I was bargaining or negotiating for a salary increase. And I think that would be because it'd be very, very important to me. And I'd want to do it right. And I would feel like, I don't know, I just would feel very nervous about that. So you can't read anything on the PDF I have pulled up. Well, it doesn't really matter, but let me see if I can fix that for you. I don't think I'm going to be able to fix that for you, but I'll post that. It's actually going to be posted in your that's your assignment. So you'll see it. You'll get it in Blackboard. That's where I'll post the assignment, and that's all that is it's basically your assignment. And I'll talk through it a little bit, but sorry about that yet. You don't need to worry about it. I thought I did have 1080p. What does LMAO mean? I should know that, but I always forget. LMAO. Back to the course. We get distracted. Laughing my butt off. Laughing? Oh, yeah, okay, got it. That's it? So it's okay. That's too good. I mean, it is what it is. I forgot. I knew that at one point. Bargaining and negotiating. So again, back to the question at hand. How do you feel about bargaining and negotiating? So nervous is one. Certainly somebody out there is like, I love it. We used to use Dave Ramsey. Use Dave Ramsey, and he loves to bargain and negotiate. So the series, this week's video series, would be Dave Ramsey telling stories about bargaining and negotiating. And Dave Ramsey tells better stories than I do. And he's usually on stage with real people instead of looking at a screen. But his stories are great. And the 1 week that I enjoyed listening to Dave Ramsey the most was the bargaining and negotiating, because that dude, I was going to say a word I probably shouldn't say. That dude loves to bargain and negotiate. And so, and he has some relatively, his ideas are not that revolutionary, but his stories are fantastic. So you worry too much, you do it. So I worry I'll do too much or too little. That's good. So yeah, parents. I'm looking at Alexandra. Philip said that his parents love to bargain. It's just what we do in Asia, even at the mall. Yeah, some cultures, lots of cultures, are way more, I guess, comfortable, or it's just expected to be a bargainer or a negotiator in other cultures. And somehow in our culture in the United States, it's not typically always uh, perceived to be acceptable. And especially, like, for example, if you go into a department store like Best Buy and you try to negotiate the price of something, believe it or not, you can do that. You ask for a manager, any manager can make a deal, but it just isn't something you would normally think of. So, yeah, yard sales, absolutely. You have to bargain and negotiate at yard sales, right? Because people are selling their, like, for example, my daughter is, I've got all this stuff. I've got so much stuff. I wish I could show you all my stuff, but I've got a Big Mac computer. It was my first Big Mac computer. It's right there. You can't see it, but it's fantastic. But I don't really need it. I've got this Big Mac computer that I'm looking at right here, which has got Retina screen and it's super powered and it's awesome. And that one was super powered and awesome, but I'm selling it now on Facebook. And I told my daughter, let's figure out the price that it's selling for, cut it in half. You sell it, I'll give you half and I'll keep half. So I'm just trying to declutter my life, and I've got so much stuff like that computer. And so I was just about to say, if you're negotiating at a yard sale or you're negotiating with my daughter, I mean, when it's cut in half and in a yard sale, it's like you're paying, 10 cents on the dollar for whatever it is you're buying. So naturally, you want to try to negotiate that down, right? I mean, but we do it at a yard sale. It's cool, but if we're at a department store and they're charging us 3 times what it's worth, we wouldn't negotiate. That's interesting. Anyway, yes. So you can bargain and negotiate if you. So here's my question. First of all, I want to know, how do you feel? Are you on this side of the room or that side of the room? And this is what I would do if we were together in the classroom. I would create an imaginary line right down the middle of the room. And I would ask you guys to tell me, which side of the room would you be on? On this side, this would be the side that I'm on, the side with the microphone that you can see over here. If I were going to choose a side, I would choose this side because this is the side of the room where I believe you can bargain and negotiate anything. It's a mindset. It's my belief that pretty much everything is negotiable. So I'm going to ask you to pick a side. This side of the room is everything is negotiable. And on that side of the room that you can't see, it's the side with my phone over here. That side of the room, this imaginary side of the room, if you choose this side of the room, then your position would be, yeah, no, bargaining and negotiating is occasionally something that has to be done, but I certainly don't think everything's negotiable, and I certainly don't want to go out and negotiate and bargain. That's just not my mode of operation. So which side of the room would you be on? Because you're not, so that makes sense. Because you don't think you're good at negotiating, you would be on this side of the room. That's great. I wish, I could work with or teach to or coach, 7 or 10 or 20 or 50 people who said, you know what, I'm on this side of the room just because I'm not good at it. Because that's really what I want to do today, is give you a few basic principles about negotiating that could help you go from I'm not good at it to, hey, it's worth doing. So first thing we want to do is just establish, which side of the room would you be on? Which side of the room would you choose to put yourself? On this side where everything's negotiable and you're ready, willing, and able to get after it, jump in and negotiate, or this side of the room where for whatever reason bargaining and negotiating feels awkward, it feels tense, and it's just not something you feel like you want to do every day for whatever reason. So pick a side. Okay. I think I see about half of you have picked a side. Phone side. I like that. Yard sale. Stefan, that's not a side. What side are you on, Stefan? Yard sale? Okay, yard sale side. I guess this is yard sale side. This is microphone side. This is phone side. It's an imaginary side, but we got to keep it consistent. Phone side is over there. Mic side is over here by the mic. Phone is over here. Phone is off, by the way. So those of you who are on Facebook or watching Netflix, you're not weighing in, you're not picking a side, and that means we have to move on without you, which is kind of sad. So I see a lot of phone sides. Thanks, Stefan. I appreciate that. No problem. You're forgiven. You were answering a question. Okay, so if you're on the phone side, phone more than microphone. Nice, Philip. I like that. If I'm reading that right, the more than sign means you're more on the phone side than the microphone side. Am I right about that? You're more on the phone side. Yes. Okay. I'm glad you said LOL. That's what I say. If I say LMAO, now I know that's like naughty. Okay. Good. So if you're on this side of the room, the phone side, because you think that not everything is negotiable, that's good. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, I want to kind of pose another question. And this question I want you to answer, but I want you to think about it for a minute. So I want to try to put a number to the cost or the value, the benefit of bargaining and negotiating. I want to try to put just a lifetime value. And so to do that, let's set the table. Let's set some metrics or boundaries. Let's assume that everyone on this call, everyone participating and choosing a side of the room, everyone here is making the same amount of money. Let's just keep the number simple and say $100,000 a year. So we're all making $100,000 a year. And let's just say that we all have the same percentage of cost going out to each of the categories in our budget. So for example, we know now that the cost of housing is between 21% and 30%, whatever that number was. And we probably could figure out what is the percentage that we spend on phones and Wi-Fi and utilities and clothes and eating out and yard sales and everything else that we're spending money on. But let's just assume that we're all making $100,000 and we're all spending it. Based on that basic idea, my question is, what would be the value, the difference? What would be the benefit amount if we put a dollar amount to it for those of us on this side of the room who say, hey, I bargain, like I'm good at it. I want to get better at it. I do it without fear, without hesitation. I bargain and negotiate everything. Versus this side of the room, the phone side of the room, where we basically, this side of the room would say, it's not my favorite thing to do, so I'm just not going to do it. Now, obviously, it's not completely 100% black and white, but for this question, I want you to think about someone you know who is like this on this side of the room, the mic side, someone like me, someone like Dave Ramsey, someone like you, if you said, yeah, you think everything's negotiable, versus that person who you probably know who is more like my wife, who would never even ask for a better deal. She would just take whatever the offer is. So those are the two extremes. And my question is, if everyone in this side and that side of the room is making the same amount of money, this side is negotiating everything, that side's negotiating nothing, what do you think, how much would that move the needle in 1 year? On a $100,000 inflow with basically all the same outflows, and I know this is totally theoretical, so there's no right answer. I'm just curious, if you had to put a number to it, what would your number be for the people who negotiate everything versus the people who don't negotiate anything? How much do you think that dollar amount would be worth on a $100,000 income if I negotiated everything. And we haven't even talked about what things are negotiable. So I don't see any numbers popping into the chat. So maybe before we do that, we should talk about what things you could negotiate. So let's do that. Let's just go through an imaginary list. Those of you who are on this side of the room, I need you to help me. If you're still here, if you're still with me, if you're not out there in Netflix land, help me out here. What are some of the things you can negotiate? What are some of the things that you say I can negotiate and bargain because salary, that's a good one. Furniture, a car, a home, absolutely. What are some things that you think maybe could be negotiated, but you suspect that people on that side of the room would say, no, you can't negotiate, you can't bargain for fill in the blank. So yeah, salary, car, home, furniture, medicine, that's a good one. George, that's a good one, medicine. What else? George, come up with a couple more. A couple things that you think can be negotiated, but probably most people haven't, at least the people on that side of the room, the phone side of the room, would probably not say, you can bargain for that, you can negotiate for that. What are some of the difficult things that... So now, bills, that's kind of generic, bills. So unpack that a little bit, Ashley. You say bills, car services. Summer, tell me a little more about car services. Well, because I used to be a master mechanic. I do a ton of my own work on cars, so I could come up with 10 things that I would say are car services, but I want to see what... Rent, that's a good one. Water bill, that's a good one, Ashley, water bill. Fees, Vanessa, again, fees is very generic, like what kind of fees? I could give you... I have new clients. I don't have as many new clients as I would like, but I always have to I get to negotiate because I own my own firm. I get to negotiate my advisory fees with my clients. So that's negotiable. If you hire a financial advisor or a wealth manager, you may not know that it's negotiable. I promise you, a lot of people don't even think to negotiate that. And I know that because I have a lot of friends they do the same thing I do, but they work for Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch or UBS or Wells Fargo, and they charge 3 times what I charge. So imagine if you're having an advisor manage $1 million. So I typically charge 1%. That sounds a lot. Sounds like a lot. 1% of $1 million. This is a fee. It's just one fee. I'm just saying this while I'm waiting for you guys to post some other stuff, which is looking good. I'm going to get to that list. But just think about it. If you get to that point where you become a millionaire and you get to that point where you think it might make sense, because the more money you have, the more moving parts there are in your financial life, and the more benefit you get from hiring a professional. It doesn't make a lot of sense to hire a professional and pay a significant fee if you have a small amount of assets, but the more assets you have, the more benefit there is from hiring someone who knows how to get the most out of your money. So 1% of $1 million is $10,000 a year. But at Morgan Stanley, where I worked, we charged 2%. That's $20,000 for the same, not even the same services, because I give more services. But my point is, you could negotiate that. Even at Morgan Stanley, you could say, that's too high. And I would be in a position then to negotiate that fee. So most people never asked. They just assumed that whatever the fee was, the fee was. But fees are always negotiable, pretty much always negotiable if you're willing to ask, if you're willing to take that step and bargain. So, Summer, that's good. You get a quote for service and say you've got a lower quote elsewhere and see if they'll match it or just see what they'll do to get your business. Rent. You really think you can negotiate rent? How would you negotiate rent, George? I'll tell you a story. Back in 2010, my 10-year lease came up for renewal. And you may not recall, but there was this thing called a GFC. Anybody know what GFC stands for? GFC question mark. Oh, I did that to Stefan. Stefan, that was supposed to be to everyone. Everyone in the meeting now. Okay. GFC question mark. Anybody know what that is? GFC? Global financial crisis. Yeah, thank you very much, Alexandra. You win the prize. You get 1,000 extra points. So after the global financial crisis, I just happened to have a 10-year lease on my office, and it came up for renewal. And I figured if there was ever a time to bargain and negotiate for my lease, it was then. I had a lease that was costing me, it was $2,200 a month for an 800 square foot office in Clear Lake, Texas. And when my lease came up for renewal, I noticed that there were a lot of empty spaces because there were a lot of businesses going out of business. So I figured now is a good time to negotiate. And I told my landlord, I want you to cut my rent in half. And if you'll do that, I'll sign another 10-year lease. Now think about that in terms of bargaining or negotiating. What was I willing to do? I was willing to commit to another 10 years when a whole lot of other people were going out of business and walking away. And I knew that, so I had a little leverage. And one of the things I did, like Summer suggested, is I went shopping for another lease, another office space. And what was the truth at that time was there was a whole lot of office space available. So back to rent, can you negotiate for rent? You know, it might be a little difficult to negotiate for rent right now. I'm not sure what the market's like, but for me in 2010, the timing was right on for me to bargain and negotiate. And my landlord gave me a 10-year lease for exactly half of what I was paying before, which is unheard. I mean, they made me sign a commitment that I wouldn't tell anybody in our complex. That was like 10 years ago, so I think I can tell you now. But anyway, that's one example of bargaining and negotiating. That saved me over 10 years. How much did that save me? So I had a lease that was $2,200 a month. How much is that in a year? Anybody get a calculator? 2,200 times 12 would be 24,800, something like that. Cut it in half to 12,000 a year over 10 years. 26,400. Really? Whoa. So 26,000, cut it in half to 13,000. 10 years, that's over $130,000 saved. Am I right? In 10 years. I mean, it was a significant savings. It's one of the that and payroll were the biggest expenses I had, rent and payroll. So anyway, yeah, that's a lot, Alexandra. That's a lot of savings. And so my point is back to not for a 10-year lease. Stefan, I don't get it. Not for a 10-year lease. Oh, yeah. Yes. So I think you were responding to George. And he said, I think landlords would rather have a unit occupied and could possibly take a lower rent payment compared to just having an empty unit, especially when you're talking about a 10-year lease. 10-year lease is a long lease, and landlords like it because it guarantees their cash flow. So that's one thing you can do to bargain and negotiate is think about what does the other party want? What do they need? What benefits them? And in this case, it was like a win-win, right? That's kind of, to me, what you're looking for in any negotiation is the win-win. Always got to think about what does the other side want? What do they need out of the deal? And in that case, I had the leverage because of the situation. There were a lot of business owners going out of business, a lot of empty spaces. I became this guy saying, hey, I'm going to be another empty space. or we can work something out that would be really good for both of us. Really good for me for sure, and hopefully good for them. But anyway, it worked. So that's rent. Now, I promise you, the people on this side of the room, the phone side of the room, like my wife Connie, would pretty much not engage in that, because think about what that took to do that kind of negotiate. I had to be willing to walk away and move. I mean, I had to convince them that I was willing to pack up everything and go somewhere else. That's a lot of work. I didn't want to do that. Relocate my State Farm agency. It's not something I really wanted to do. But they had to be convinced that I would do that. That's one of the key things one of the 7 bargaining tips that I'll talk about here in a minute. But so at this point, anybody have an idea what price, what value, if you make $100,000 a year, what would be the imaginary number that you might save over a year if you were a bargainer versus somebody who didn't bargain or negotiate anything? I'm looking at the list. Insurance, late fees. Oh, Vanessa, late fees. Yeah, late fees. I hate to admit it, but I get charged late fees on my credit card every once in a while. Like, they're not even late fees. Well, they may be late fees, but mostly it's the interest. So I always pay my credit cards off every month, but I have this one credit card that for some reason it doesn't bill. It's on auto pay, but it doesn't, the bill doesn't get paid, and then it's late. And then I have credit, or not credit, but interest, which I hate. So you think that's negotiable? I'm telling you it is. I pick up the phone, I call the credit card, I tell them what happened, and I ask them to waive the fee and waive the interest. And I have yet to have my credit card company say no. Now, it doesn't happen every month, obviously, but it probably happens once a year, and they always will do it. So, and I can't say they'll always do it, and it certainly depends on your history, your track record with the company that you're trying to negotiate those late fees with, but it's definitely one that is negotiable. How about college? Is college negotiable? Usually when I do this exercise in class, I ask the question, what are some things you think are not negotiable? And we get a list, and usually college is the one that I'm like, yeah, college is, but what else would you say is not negotiable? Insurance. I'm on the, so I don't see anything in the chat. I'm going to take a drink of water. What's not negotiable? Groceries most of the time. Thanks, Vanessa. What do you think, Alexandra? What do you think's not negotiable? There are like 3 things that I scratch my head and say, yeah, probably not negotiable. One of them is anything I buy from this one company that I don't know that I love the company, but I kind of can't get away from their products. Retail, Apple, Ashley, that's Apple. It's like, is it negotiable? Can you negotiate with Apple? It's tough. I have negotiated a few things with Apple, but it's just not easy because they're not really willing to negotiate because they have a great product, and I guess that's just their deal. Grocery stores, no shelter, food, and clothes. So shelter, food, and clothes. Stefan, I would say if you're not negotiating for clothes, you're really missing out. Tuition is definitely one of the things that is in that list of things that are difficult to negotiate. On the other hand, I have heard stories about folks who have negotiated in different ways. One way is bargaining and negotiating is figuring out a way to get the school to put the student on as a supervisor or some job where they actually get paid. And that may not seem like bargaining and negotiating to you, but if you're a student who hasn't yet paid the tuition and you're trying to work with the college to make it all come together, it definitely is a form of bargaining and negotiating, because one party's saying, hey, I am having trouble making this cost. What can you do to help me? And that then becomes a leverage or a bargaining to get that position. And that happens on a regular basis. Um, Coupons. Yeah, I think coupons at a grocery store. Ashley, so one of the things that early on when I started teaching this course, everyone would say you cannot negotiate for groceries, which I thought, yeah, I've never negotiated for a can of baked beans. I don't go to the front of the store and say, hey, can I get a discount on this? But coupons definitely is a form of negotiating and bargaining. And a friend of mine, Adam, I shop at HEB, and HEB, I love HEB. I do. It's a beautiful store. It's right down the street from my house. I love HEB. I used to live in a little town called Ridgeway, Pennsylvania, and it's a great little town, but it only had 2 grocery stores. And one of the grocery stores went out of business, meaning it only had 1 grocery store. And I didn't like that grocery store. It didn't have a good label, a good brand. It was weird tasting ketchup. So you had to buy brand name ketchup. I just didn't like that store. We moved back to Texas, and there's a brand new huge HEB, and I love HEB. But HEB has a pretty lame, well, not lame, but their meat department, like they have meat on sale a lot, but the meat isn't a high quality. And so my friend Adam told me, Walmart has a pretty good high quality meat department. And they were, at the time anyway, willing to take coupons from other stores. So Adam was like, hey, yeah, you just take the paper from HEB and you go shop at Walmart. And I started doing that. And it was like I was getting top quality meat at HEB bargain sale prices. So that story was when I first started teaching this. And it was my way of saying, yeah, you can negotiate for groceries. It's just one of the things that if you're on this side of the room, you're thinking, hey, everything's negotiable. There's a way to bargain and negotiate, and that's going to move the needle on how much extra you have to invest for your future. Versus folks on this side of the room, the phone side of the room, who maybe just feel awkward or they're just not willing. It's too much work. And so the whole point here today, folks, is to say, if you think that everything's negotiable, if you're willing to approach everything as if there's a way to get a better deal, then chances are you're going to find this pattern in your life that actually pays off. And over time, there's some number, and nobody's given me a number, nobody's given me a guess for how much you're going to save in a year. If everybody was making $100,000, how much are we ahead of the people over here who don't bargain, don't negotiate anything? And I don't know what the number is, but I promise you there's a number. And we haven't even talked about bargaining and negotiating your salary. So that's like a big one. And that's one of your assignments this week is my friend Ramit Sethi. He's a great guy. I met him at a conference, and he does this video it's an interview about how to negotiate your salary. So I thought that would be helpful for you. It's one of the big ticket items that I would love for you to think about over your lifetime, learning the approach for bargaining and negotiating your pay from your employer. So that's just one of the big ticket items. I'm not sure what you meant, Ashley. HEB greater than Walmart. You like HEB better than Walmart like me? If that's what you're saying, then I agree 100%. Yes, HEB is so much better. I think HEB is better than Kroger, Randall's, Food Lion, Aldi's, you name it. I just like HEB, but their meat is sometimes kind of cheap. They have great sales, but you get what you pay for when you get it on sale sometimes. So who knows? I think Walmart is still doing that. If anybody knows, feel free to chime in. Yeah, I like price match too, Michael. So, and we have Philip said Netflix. I don't know how you negotiate Netflix, but I do have a Netflix subscription. So tell me how I can save. I think it's only like $11 a month. I haven't really checked lately, but okay. So nobody's going to give me a number. The $100,000. What would be the amount of savings if you did approach everything as negotiable versus someone who doesn't? On $100,000 income, what would be the benefit, the dollar value of saying, you know what, I'm going to learn to negotiate everything I possibly can? How much would that be in 1 year? So I see some numbers that look very familiar to what I usually get. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 5,000, 25,000. And I don't see anybody going to the 50,000 mark. But, again, there's no right answer, and I have no idea. And the point is, there's a number, and there is an amount, and it is worth something, which makes it worth thinking about whether or not you want to stay on this side or stay on that side where you don't negotiate anything, versus moving into this position where your mindset is, hey, everything's negotiable. I'm going to do my best to try to identify opportunities to bargain and negotiate, because at the end of the day, if it saves you, let's just say 15,000, that's like in the middle of the road, or even let's say 10,000, 10%, which I think is a very reasonable number. I think I am 10% smarter, 10% better negotiator, 10% harder worker in terms of getting a good deal. I'm 10% better at waiting. I'm 10% better at, I don't want to say being a bully. When I watch Dave Ramsey sometimes to me seems like a bully when he negotiates. And so I want to be careful to say, listen, when you negotiate something, the other person, like I mentioned about yard sales, imagine going into my yard sale where I'm selling all my life treasures for 10 cents on the dollar, and you want to get it for 5 cents. There's some point where I think just being respectful, being smart enough to see, hey, that's a good deal. You don't have to bargain it down. And so when I try to sell something, I try to make it so that you don't even need to bargain for it. And so you got to be smart enough to know you're dealing with actual human beings. Sometimes you're dealing with a retail establishment, and that's a little different, But even if you're buying a used car, which we would all agree, hopefully, that if you ever buy a used car, it's totally negotiable. A used car, a new car, everything's negotiable. But I've bought a lot of used cars. And so hopefully you know that if you're buying a used car from a used car salesman, even though that used car salesman works for the used car sales lot, which is an entity, a retail establishment, you're still dealing with a human being who is a human being. And so, you don't want to try to squeeze the last nickel out of him when he's, going to give up his sales commission to sell you a car. Just be respectful of that. So one of the things did I tell you guys the story about Ashley Furniture? I don't always forget, but I sometimes forget which stories I've told. No, thanks, Ashley. Since your name is Ashley, you would remember that story. So here's the story. And this happened to me the first semester I taught this class. I was about to teach bargaining and negotiating. And so my wife and I wanted to buy some new furniture. We needed it for a while because we bought some furniture on sale at an estate sale. Turned out to be the worst furniture I ever owned. I hated it. I wanted to get rid of it, but I needed new furniture to replace it. And so what happened was we finally decided, my wife's sister got some new furniture. She loved it. She told my wife she got it at Ashley Furniture. So it was a Sunday night. We get on my motorcycle. My wife and I drive to Ashley Furniture down on I-45 in Webster, Texas. And we found this leather couch that had electric, what do you call them? Electric, the thing that goes out, recliner. And we wanted two couches. We didn't want a couch and a love seat. We wanted two couches in our living room to face each other. And then we wanted a love seat, all leather. So we got these three beautiful pieces of furniture, and they had them at Ashley's, and it was awesome. The price was about $5,500 for the furniture, which at the time I was making really good money, and I didn't really care how much it cost. I wanted it. And so I'm sitting there in the showroom, sitting on the furniture that we're going to buy. And I asked the salesman, I said, hey, just curious, because I started thinking I'm going to be teaching about bargaining and negotiating, and I should probably, since I'm going to say in my story that I think everything's negotiable and that it's kind of smart to try to negotiate things and be smart about it, I should probably do that today. And I was just kind of lazy, and I wanted furniture. I wanted to check it off my list. So there I'm sitting in this store, and I realize I better at least try, because otherwise I won't have any integrity. So I asked the salesman, I said, hey, let me just ask you this. If I go shopping for this furniture somewhere else, am I going to find a better deal? And guess what he told me? What do you think he told me? What do you think that salesperson who's paid to make that sale would start to say? He told me no. Yeah, kind of no. He never really told me no. Here's what he told me. He started telling me about how great their service was, and how they take good care of their customers, and how if I ever have a problem, and if I buy this guarantee over here, they'll fix the furniture and all this stuff, and their delivery is white glove, super great, and I'll get it the next day. And he starts telling me all these benefits that he was taught to sell. No price match, Stefan. That wasn't what he said. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. But he didn't really tell me that I was getting the best price, which is what I was really asking, because I'm paying $5,500 plus I'm paying, I paid a $250 delivery, plus I was paying tax, plus I had to pay $250 for each piece to have this, guarantee that if I poke a pencil in my furniture, they'll replace it, which I thought was a good idea because it seemed like a good idea at the time. So when I make all that list, the whole total price was going to be somewhere over $6,500. And so I picked up my phone, which is off at the moment, so I can't do it. But I picked up my phone. I took the name of the product that I was sitting on, and I typed it into Mr. Google, and I found that same exact furniture was available from two different sources. One source was Ashley Furniture, which was a retail store. The other one was Coleman Furniture, which was a total online, deal. And the price at Coleman was almost half of what it was at Ashley, the same exact product. And there was no tax if I ordered it online. At the time, there was no tax in Texas from ordering online. Coleman, no tax. And they gave free delivery instead of $250. And when you buy the guarantee, so you don't poke a hole in your furniture with a pencil or sharp object or whatever, you paid for that guarantee per order. How many pieces was I buying? 3. 2 couches and a love seat. Versus Ashley wanted $250 for each piece of furniture. I think that's what it was, but it was per item at Ashley's. So free delivery, no tax, one price for all of the guarantee that if I damage the furniture. So you think, is Ashley ripping me off? I think what it was, now, here was the drawback. There was one relatively big drawback. If you're in this idea that you're going to have it right now, Coleman's was going to take like a week to deliver the furniture. Ashley's was going to deliver it to my house the next morning. So Ashley's had the furniture in their warehouse on site, or in Houston anyway. That's what they were selling. And that's probably why it was more expensive, because Ashley's had to warehouse the furniture. They had to pay someone to sell it to me. They had to pay for that retail space where people could come and look at it and sit on it. Coleman didn't have to do any of that. They had a website. Click on the website. You see the furniture. It has a description. You order it. They ship it from a warehouse, one warehouse for the whole country. So I don't know that Ashley's was ripping me off. Ashley's was a different type of, provider. My only point is, if you're willing to step back and do some research, and that's one of the 7 tips I have to give you, is do a little research, and you just have no idea how that might pay off. And so that's my story. Yeah, research is important. So let's make a list of the 7 things that, and it could be, you could have 7 different things than I do, but I'm going to make a list, and I want you to too. Make a list. If you were going to make a list, what are 7 things you should do if you want to bargain and negotiate? Well, I'm going to make a list. I'm making it on my paper here. I could make it right here. Let me do this. I'm going to make it right here. Let's see. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go back over here. Give me just a second. Okay, so I'm going to show you the list that I'm making. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to say 7 tips to negotiate everything. And I want you to make your list while I'm making mine. Okay? Let's see if this works. Number 1, I'm going to say everything is negotiable. And remember, the reason that I'm saying that is because we have 2 sides of the room. One side of the room, we think everything's negotiable. And that means because we think that, we do it. And people that are on this side of the room who think, they don't like to don't want to negotiate, don't feel comfortable those folks, like my wife, just don't do it. And so one of my tips is just think differently. Put on your thinking cap and recognize that everything's negotiable. Number 2, I'm going to say timing matters. So think about the whole, if you buy a car at the end of the month, timing matters. If you're trying to buy a house when interest rates are low, or if you try to negotiate your lease when there's a lot of empty spaces, timing matters. Another one is cash is king. That's not so much true, but what does matter is purchasing power. So you can think about what these things mean, but I'm just making a list of 7 things, hoping you're doing the same. Cash is purchasing power. In other words, if I come to you and I want to buy something, but I don't have the money, and I need you to lend me the money, doesn't give me much leverage. But if I come to you and say, hey, I'll pay cash for that, that can move the needle because you don't want to have to take the risk. So that's, I'd say, number 4. Let's see, there's 7 things I always like to just nail down. One of them is this: silence. So silence is very powerful in a negotiation. You say something like you could say, that's not good enough. That's one of the 7, in fact. And that puts the ball in the other person's court, and they have to then come back and say, well, what about this? What about that? Well, one of the things you got to do is be quiet. Give them space to think. Let the pressure be on them. So silence, I say silence is golden. That's one of my 7. that's not good enough. It's just an easy way to say, give me something better to work with. It's a simple, easy thing to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see. Oh. Just like I said about Ashley Furniture, you got to do some homework. You got to do a little research. So that's number 6. And then if there's one kind of thing you can work on that I would encourage you to work on is your walk-away muscle. And that's, pretty self-explanatory, I hope. Anyway, that's 7 things, but that's walk-away muscle, and you could make your own list. But the walk-away muscle is, it's just basically convincing the other person that you have the wherewithal to walk away. Because if you're not willing to walk away, and if they think that you're in love with this deal so much that you have to have it, who's got the bargaining power? Whereas if you're willing to walk away, you have so much. Try it sometime with it. I've tried it with cars on a regular basis. So when I go to buy a car, and I'll leave you with this story because we're out of time. But when I go to buy a car, and I do buy cars from dealers sometimes because I know what I'm looking for and I want that specific color, that car with this mileage and so on. So it's easier to find 3 of the same car if I shop at dealers. I like to buy from individuals, but I'll go to a dealer. But when I find it, I go make an offer. And if they don't like it, I'm like, okay. And I walk away. And you may be surprised to know that almost every time I walk away and they call me and they say, okay, or they give me another offer or whatever. But being willing to walk away is not something you can fake. Maybe you can. I'm not saying just fake it. I'm saying walk away. Have that mindset that, if you can't get a deal that makes sense, that you're going to walk away. Because if you're there and you have to have this apartment, or you have to have this dress, or you have to have this house, or you have to have this car, you're not going to be in a very good position to negotiate. So those are my 7 things. Everything's negotiable. Timing really does matter. Patience is really valuable, and I'd put that there. Having purchasing power, used to be cash was king. Dave Ramsey would say, you start laying down $100 bills. Well, frankly, most people would rather have a credit card because it's safer, it's just easier. So cash isn't what it used to be, but it is important. If you're buying from an individual, it still matters. Cash is king, but it's the purchasing power that really gives you the negotiating leverage. And then this is silence. Very effective in negotiating. And you're going to learn more from my friend Ramit, but think about these 7 things, and I'm going to ask you to come up with, or at least talk about the things you learned this week about negotiating. Research, like I said with Ashley, if you don't do the research, you just won't know what you're getting or how it compares. And then the walk-away muscle is very, very important. So thanks for being on our Zoom call. I'm going to jump into Zoom and see if we have any questions. Swag walk? Stefan, I'm not sure what swag walk. Swag is, I'm not sure. But confidence. Yeah, confidence. Too late. Don't worry. Okay, thanks. So no questions, no comments, no funny stories. Just have a great week. I'll see you Friday. There won't be much of a... this assignment this week is really pretty easy. We're going to jump into next week. We're going to jump into insurance and then investing and retirement planning, and it's going to come pretty fast. And we're going to get to the end of the semester pretty fast from here. So this week is kind of an easy assignment. Just think about bargaining and negotiating. Learn a few things, and just think about what it's going to mean to you as you work towards achieving your goals. Hopefully one of them is to become a millionaire by the time you're 50. And if that's the case, learning a few techniques and tips to bargain and negotiate as appropriate and as the opportunities come up will make a big difference in terms of the bottom line. So I hope this has been valuable for you. I didn't want it to not be part of our course, even though it doesn't really sync up with your financial plan completely, but we'll get back on track working towards your capstone starting next week as we get into insurance and then investing and retirement planning. Thanks for being here. If you have questions, you're welcome to jump in there and put them in. Otherwise, I'm going to close out, say goodbye, and have a great week. See you Friday. There won't be much to share Friday because this is a super easy assignment. But I'll still jump in and do a review for you. So take care.